Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Adi Sasmita. I would like to explain about the teacher. Next, there are several points about the teacher, and I will explain in the next session. The first is being yourself. The aim is to find an authentic persona. In this context, you must have authenticity. It means that you being yourself and don't be somebody else. Be real you and show you're genuine, because it is important thing that every teacher should have. 5 steps to authenticity. The first is don't try to be a teacher. It means that you just need to be yourself so that you are an authentic person, so that your student can feel your kindness and your genuine love. And second is have real conversation. In informal situations, you can ask the student feeling or condition, or maybe you can ask their reaction about several things and so on. And the third is don't pretend omniscient. If you don't know about certain things, you should be honest. Don't pretend like you know about all the things. Then the fourth is be wary of staff room advice. The staff room advice may can help you, but it's not always right. Just take the thing that is positive, and you should think first before following the staff room advice. And the last is be appropriately authoritative. You should know the time and situation when you can be authoritative and when you are not authoritative. We move to the next point. The second is about establishing and maintaining rapport. The aim is to make a good working relationship in classroom. Building rapport. It is important thing to keep relationship between teacher and student. Therefore, there are several points that teacher can do. The first is be welcoming, be encouraging, and be approachable. Give more opportunity for student to talks, to do discussion, and so on. And the second is treat each learner as an individual. You just need to believe to every student or individual potential. Therefore, keep encourage them, motivate them, because every student have different potential. Just respect them and believe on the student potential. And the third is remember positive thing about your student in the classroom. Always bear in mind about things that students do in classroom. For instance, their achievement, discipline, and so on. And fourth is empathize. You should not be selfish. Think from different perspective. For instance, from student point of view and so on. Then, be you rather than teacher. Show your attentiveness. You can ask personal questions, listen to them, and that it indicates that you are more than teacher. You are the teacher that can understand them. You are more than teacher. And six is don't fake happiness. So that you are happy with them and try to not fake the happiness. The seventh is be culturally sensitive. You must do correctly about culturals, especially about local context. If you ask students to do certain things, make sure that what they do is right. Then is avoid sarcasm. You need to be kind. Don't do things that can hurt somebody hurt. The next technique is about mirroring, leading, and passing. The first is mirroring. It means reflecting other person. If your student facing the whiteboard, you can facing the whiteboard too. And the second is passing. It means follow person movement. If your student walks, you can follow them. You can walk too. If your student laugh, you can laugh too. And the third is leading. You lead some movement in case your student follow your movement subconsciously. The technique. Is it okay to be friends with student? There are several points. The first is students are worker. The friendship may unnecessary and cause potentially dangerous. And the second is students are student. In this context, you can respecting working relationship That more important. And the third is students are people. In this context, the friendship is natural. You respect as human being. The next is ways of listening. The aim is to listen in the most appropriate way at different stages of lesson. Three distinct varieties of listening. The first is conversational. In this context, you listen like doing everyday conversation listening, and it allows you to do conversation. And the second is analytical. In this context, you listen and pay attention to the language, and then you analyze. And the third is supportive. In this context, you listen and pay attention to the speaker. You deep understand the message. Analytical listening technique. The first is respond to the message or language. In this context, you just respond about something that related to your listen. For example, it related to your listen aim, stage aim, and many more. And then is analyze the problem. If you respond to the language rather than the message, you can analyze the sentence. For example, if your student have a grammatical mistake, you can correct them. And then decide on how you give a feedback. Bear in mind, you don't have to give a feedback to your student. It might some student that receive your feedback. In addition, you just need to choose the most useful to give a feedback. Supportive listening technique. You may sit together with your colleagues and then you ask them to speak with you, but in this context you just listen to them carefully. You give opportunity to them to speak for several minutes. It's about 2 until 5 minutes. Then you move around, you walking around and see and listen carefully to their speaking. And then after your colleagues finish from the speaking, you ask your colleagues about the feedback. It might about how it felt to be listened to in each of this way. Or it can be did the quality of your listening actively affect the quality of her speaking? This session discusses about turning the volume up and down. The technique is experimenting with volume. The first is try to use different volume in certain classroom activity. You can use different volume in different activity. For example, you can use for instruction when you explain about several material, when you give a running game, tasks, and so on. And then there is start a lesson quietly. You can give instruction quietly when you give a task. And then you can repeat again for several moments in order to make sure that the student is understand your instruction. This session discusses about finding the right voice tone. The first technique is experimenting with voice tone out of the class. You can read some text in different books and then you should use different tones such as angry tones, impatient tones, excited tones, and others. And the second technique is experimenting with voice tone in the classroom. In this occasion, you should use different tones. For instance, friendly tones, storytelling tones, authoritative tones, and so on. In this session, discuss about varying the quantity of your control. The technique is finding out how changing control changes interaction. The first is high control, in which you make a great management decision and a lot of micromanagement instruction. For example, you constantly help your student and direct them, interview of the student activity, and so on. So you handle and pay attention to the student a lot. And the second is low control, in which you limiting yourself to intervention in classroom activity. For example, you make an intervention less than 10 in the stages of your classroom activity. And then is no control, in which after you give first instruction, you don't make any kind of intervention in classroom activity. For example, you give intervention only after the task has been completed. This session discusses about gesture and facial expression. There are several techniques. The first is gesture, in which classroom organization and instruction. As you can see, there are several examples of gesture. In the first picture, so the man hands apart with palm facing in, as if to fold around the individual, and it means that work on your own. And the next is the woman show hands wide, shaping a pair. It means get into pairs, and so on. This is also include the gesture in classroom organization and instruction. And the next is the technique of gesture in which classroom instruction. In the first picture, the woman show finger at lips. It means students have to be silent. And the second picture show finger zipping lips. It means stop talking. And the next picture show the man that hand flat in front of body, palms down, and it means stop work now. This is also the example of technique of gesture in which classroom instruction. The next technique is gesture in which feedback on language and error. In the first picture show the women hand doing ruling gesture. It means the students must say it again. And the second picture, the woman show thumb ups. So it means good sentence, and so on. And the next technique is gesture in which indicating time. The man show hand or finger pointing back over shoulder. So it means pass. And the next, the man show hand or finger pointing straight down, meaning now. And the next is showing hand or finger pointing ahead. It means future. The next technique is general guidance for using gesture and expression. The first is your gesture should clear, so it must easy to understand for student. And the second is your gesture easy to see from different viewpoints, so all of your students in different position, in front of, behind, corner, can see your gesture and expression. And the third is encourage students to use gesture and expression. So you not only use a gesture or expression, but your students should using gesture and expression too. The next technique is eye contact. You must make an eye contact with your student. Don't try to hide your eye contact. And the second is keep your eye contact comfortable and relaxed. Make sure that your eye contact is good looking for student. And the third is express how you feeling, showing your interest and enjoyment. If you are happy for the student, show that you are happy and showing your interest for your student in the classroom activity. So it will help you to maintain your relationship with your student. This point discusses about the teacher language. The technique is what can be great in speaking context. The first is grammar and lexics. You should avoid the grammatical and lexical item that never covered and provided before in the student books. And second, about sound. You have to avoid listening difficulties because the pronunciation. And the third is stress. It means that stressing each word is very important in speaking. And the fourth is sequencing a content. You should provide and start information in logical order. And the fifth is speed of delivery. You may consider about the use of longer or shorter pauses between every word or clauses or sentence. And sixth is discourse feature and noise. The clarity of voices can affect the language used. So it's same as noises that can affect the language. The seventh is complexity of message. So you have to categorize and classify, or maybe you can break the difficult concept into smaller in order to become easy pieces. And the eighth is quantity of message. So you have to give things briefly. In addition, also provide some message that easy to understand. And you must avoid much longer one. In this session, discuss about using intuition. The technique is observing my intuition at work. The first way is turn up and tune in. You should pay attention and switch into small quiet voice inside you. And second is you decide who to trust. Find someone that you can believe and trust on. And the third is prepare. So you have to observe what happens if you follow your intuition. And then you can reflect and evaluate that it is good or not. And the next technique is prepare but don't plan. So it means that you have to plan, but you give more flexibility in your planning area, because this is will help you to give up free changing and responding to certain things that happen unexpected. The last point discuss about the teacher as researcher. The teacher should observe what thing that student needs, what thing that can be improved in the classroom activity, and so on. So the teacher should become a researcher and at the same time become a teacher. So it will help teacher to improve the learning and teaching process become better. The technique is classroom research. The first way is finding research problem or question. So you must find your problem in your classroom to conduct this research. And the second is think about how you can investigate the research in classroom. You can find appropriate method and tools to obtain the data. And the third is decide the organizational basic, such as how long to conduct the research, what will you do with the information that already collect, and many more. And the fourth is analyze the data and information and also make decision. Also, you already collect your data, you have to analyze and make some consideration and also decision to go to the next step. After that, you can plan what will you do in order your research long-lasting changes to your teaching and learning. So you can use the same method or other method that can improve the other problem that may come up in the future. So that's all about my PowerPoint and presentation. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.